Welcome to our new format Cloud Industry Forum Presents TWF show with the help of our friends here at Disruptive Live. We've moved our new section to our blog. So this is our new style video podcast where we interview a guest each week from our members or from the cloud business ecosystem. I'm David Terrar. I'm the CEO of Cloud Industry Forum, which is a not-for-profit trade body that champions and helps accelerate the adoption of cloud technology and services. This show, TechWave Forum, is about cloud technology and transformation and what's coming next. If you want to find out more about us and what we do, we're at cloudindustryforum.org. I'm at DT on X, I'm David_Terrar on Threads and Instagram, and I'm easy to find on LinkedIn. My guest today is a stalwart of the technology space. He's a VP and practice leader from an analyst firm, the Futurum Group. And we're going to be talking about hybrid cloud and AI, how AI is changing things and the continuing importance of the mainframe and where next for cloud. So Steven Dickens, all the way from somewhere in America. It's great to see you. Great to have you on the show. Please, can you introduce yourself and Futurum?
Hey, David. Is stalwart code for old? Because I'm feeling that way a little today. So
that's what you'd have said if I'd said veteran. So I thought stalwart was a better
veteran,
word.
Yeah. So hi, everybody. My name's Steven Dickens. I'm a VP and practice leader here at the Futurum Group. Known David for a while. I cover everything from hybrid cloud, infrastructure, and operations for the Futurum Group. So all of our research, advisory, and our engagements with our clients in that space.
Excellent. Now, I'm intrigued by all of that. And as you say, we've known each other for a long time. Tell us a bit about your background and your history in tech and what led you to join Futurum.
So prior to joining Futurum, I was 10 years at IBM, which is where we know each other from. Various roles there culminating in leading the worldwide sales team for Linux on the mainframe and running Linux One. Prior to that, I'd been the product manager that had launched Linux One. So an interesting sort of 10 years at IBM. Prior to that, 10 years in two stints. So 2 5-year stints at HPE with a little gap in the middle to go work for an outsourcing firm. So Broadcom, what is Broadcom now? Prior to that, what was CA at the time? So yes, there's some white in the beard and I'm feeling old today. So I've got coming up on 30 years experience in the industry now.
Excellent. HPE and Broadcom are actually members of the forum, which is good. IBM used to be, and I've got to get them back in.
Well, hopefully this prompts them.
Excellent. Now, your core topic is hybrid cloud. Give us your take on why it should be a multi-cloud world that we live in.
So if you look at it, and it's interesting, I've been to Google Cloud Next, I've been to AWS's reInvent so far this year. And if you look at those events, there's even an acknowledgement from the hyperscale public cloud providers that we live in a hybrid world. I think you look at cloud adoption, and it was interesting to hear the discussion out at reInvent. You know, what are we, 17 years now into the public cloud? Adoption has been fantastic, obviously. And AWS has built a particularly huge business with hundreds and hundreds of services, as have Microsoft, as have Google, as have IBM, as have Oracle and a number of others. But we're still not at 100% adoption of public cloud. And I think that's because the phrase I always use and the analogy I use is just because the car was invented doesn't mean trains and planes are obsolete. I think people look at their workloads, they look at them as a journey and say, what is the right vehicle for that journey?
Absolutely.
Now, most journeys are taken in the car, and maybe you rent your car. So I'm stretching the analogy now, but I think that's definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
But also, when you need to get across the country, you need to get across the Atlantic for me to get back home in a few weeks' time, or when I jump on the train to go down to New York, I'm making a conscious decision of what is the best form of transport for the type of journey that I'm looking for. Exactly. And I think enterprise architects are doing the same as they look at workload placement and say, what are the non-functional requirements of this workload and where best should I put it? And that could be the public cloud. Could also be on-prem. It could be co-located in a Equinix data center. It could be working with a smaller managed service provider. All options are valid.
Yeah.
And I think the rubric that these enterprise architects are going through around where do they put these workloads has evolved. I think we're past the point where public cloud is the answer. What's the question?
Yes,
And I
exactly.
think we're a lot more maturity now of where I should put that. There's differences between public cloud providers. There's differences between on-prem and various options in between. I think the other thing I would say is on-premises infrastructure isn't what it was 17 years ago. You look at HPE GreenLake, Dell Apex,
Yeah.
TrueScale from Lenovo. I've just been working with a company called SoftIron. You look at Nutanix. All the sort of work that's going on in the Kubernetes space with Red Hat and Rancher Prime from SUSE. It's a very different space for on-premises infrastructure than it was 17 years ago. So I think you've got to factor that in as well.
Excellent. No, I absolutely agree with you. No one size all fits solutions, totally. Now, 2023 has been the year of generative AI. In a way, I think most of us didn't expect with the initial big interest at the start of the year. I think it's surprised a lot of us that it's carried on throughout 2023. It's dominated the news all year. What's your take on Gen AI?
I thought we did really well, David, to go sort of 8 minutes into this recording without mentioning AI. It's really captured the zeitgeist and the sort of both public perception. I think OpenAI was the fastest growing app ever to get to I think it was whether it was 100 million or a billion users, I don't know, but certainly the fastest growing from a sort of commercial perspective. And I think we've seen the same from a enterprise perspective as well, although we're earlier in that growth. I think from a cloud perspective, it's going to be the next wave. Do I subscribe to the sort of current perception that this is, as transformational as the internet and the mobile and the smartphone? I think that's maybe a bit early to say that, but I think it's certainly powering a lot of where those hyperscale cloud providers, some of the vendors like Nvidia and AMD made some huge announcements this week. So it's a fascinating time to be in the industry. I was joking with one of my colleagues that it's basically created a second job for us tracking this space. There's literally an announcement every day, and as analysts whose job it is to track the industry, we can't keep up.
No, it's amazing. Now, that's very interesting, but what do you think, what are the sort of ways that people should be using it and focusing on with AI?
Well, I think we're going to see it across the board. I think it's going to level up. I mean, particularly for developers. I think developers, that is a use case that makes perfect sense to me. I think taking your average developer and leveling them up into a super developer is definitely something that's already happening. So I think that's probably the most obvious use case. All of the sort of creative arts, we've seen Adobe with what they've been doing, with photo editing. I think sort of all of the creative and writing arts are going to be sort of the next obvious space. But then I'm seeing fascinating examples in call centers and across enterprise apps. I think it's going to be pervasive. It's going to be everywhere. I think it's going to be a key part of our daily lives and everything we do. And I think we're only just getting started.
Totally agree. Interesting. Now, coming into 2023, if I turn the clock back a year, I was actually expecting sustainability to maybe the biggest topic of 2023, but it hasn't got the airtime because Gen AI came along. Do you think it will get more focus in 2024?
I think it's interesting. I think I was thinking the same. I think the macroeconomic climate kind of nixed ESG being as big a topic as it was likely to be. I think when times get hard, people focus on the bottom line, and ESG is one of those things that can get pushed back out. So I think with the macroeconomic climate improving, I think it's going to come back around. It's going to be back as an area of focus. I think from some of the announcements I've seen, I was out at Lenovo earlier this year. The really detailed planning and thinking through and being able to choose from a supply chain point of view. Do you bulk ship? Can you choose which type of PC you want shipped? How do you want it shipped? What level of packaging do you want? How do you want it delivered? Real level of granularity that I've not seen before. I think that's going to become more pervasive, and I think people are going to be worried more and more about their ESG pledges and how they become real. So I think it's going to get there. I think it's taken a back seat because of the macro environment. And then obviously Gen AI just took all of the oxygen out of the room.
Absolutely. And by the way, Lenovo is one of my newest members of the forum, and Ian Jeffs. Ian Jeffs has become our chair of the Cloud Industry Forum.
Ian Jeffs is a fantastic guy to be running that business in the UK and Ireland.
Excellent stuff. Now, I know you mentioned mainframe in your history, for me, it's fascinating because I started with mainframes an awful long time ago. Why is it still important, and how does the mainframe fit into the cloud world?
So if we go back and look at the sort of analogy I used of planes, trains, cars, I think there is a platform, there is a requirement for a platform, more accurately, where all of the dials are turned up to 11. So performance, availability, scalability, security. You dial all those up to 11, and that's the space that the mainframe sits in. So if you're running a core banking application for a Barclays or a HSBC, that absolutely has to work 24 by 7, 365, or your front page news. And ultimately, you're probably going to lose your job if it's not available and running at the performance level that it needs. It's a foundational part of the UK economy and the global economy. So there's a different set of requirements that exist around that type of application. That's where the mainframe fits. There's about 5,000 mainframe customers around the world. That number is not decreasing. We're starting to see new customers come onto the platform for Linux One, running mission critical Linux applications on the Linux only variant of the mainframe, which is interesting. So I think, yes, there's lots of hype. Yes, there's lots of talk. And I was out at AWS reInvent meeting with their M2 team and some of the work they've done for being able to get people off. And I think that's going to happen as well. Certain applications from a legacy perspective shouldn't be on a mainframe, and those should be replatformed and refactored to another location. But if you've got an absolutely mission critical, you'll be front page news if you get a second of downtime type platform and requirement, the mainframe's still the place to be. And I think that's why it fits so well within a hybrid cloud perspective, because you're going to need to surround that system with systems of engagement, mobile applications and AI applications. So it certainly plays its role. And IBM's done a fantastic job over the last maybe 10 years plus to include it in a hybrid cloud architecture.
Great. Now, and you mentioned the Linux one a couple of times, and obviously your mainframe background. And I saw on your LinkedIn profile that you're involved in the Open Mainframe Project. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so that was probably one of my career highlights at IBM. So I was asked to approach the Linux Foundation to set up a collaborative project for open source on the mainframe. So that is everything from open source ZOS right through to open source around Linux on the mainframe. And that project's now gone on to be a mid-sized project within the collaborative project framework. And if you think of something like CNCF and Hyperledger as the biggest projects in that framework, and then things like the Confidential Computing Consortium and kind of others, I think there's now over 100 collaborative projects under that structure. And the Open Mainframe Project has been one of those since 2015. It's, I think, 45 members now. About 10 different code bases are looked after by that community. And it's really a vibrant place where open source is being developed by the community, for the community, on the mainframe. So, really proud to be involved in that still. I host their podcast for them on a regular basis. And still get involved in some of the work that the community does. It's a fascinating project. And if you go openmainframeproject.org, you can find out and become a member of that community.
Great, great stuff. Now, you're with Futurum Group. Tell us a bit more about them. I mean, I notice this on social media, you're always announcing new capabilities and acquisitions and new employees. What's going on? What are you guys building?
Yeah, so it's been a busy week, actually. It's been a really busy week. So we're a research and advisory firm that does things a little bit differently, being disruptive, not operating our content via a paywall is the first sort of piece. All of our content's freely available on the internet, so we're not selling seats and selling access to our research. And also, we kind of lean into the influence piece. So, big presences on some of the social media platforms and really sort of try and lead that conversation where we believe customers and vendors are living and sort of consuming content. So, really disrupting. When I joined 2.5 years ago, I was employee number 4, and we did a HR call yesterday, and there was 45 full-time employees on that call. So huge growth. We've made, I think it's 7 acquisitions so far this year to build out our capability. So everything from labs, market sizing intelligence, right through to primary research, commission content, and also an ABM marketing agency to help vendors with the work that they're doing. So, fascinating place to be. We're starting to take on the big 3 of Gartner, IDC, and Forrester. And in a few of our accounts now, we've become their 3rd largest supplier, which is, if you just said that would have happened when I joined 2.5 years ago, I probably would have laughed at you. But I was literally on with one of our vendors yesterday, and she said, "Yes, you're my number 2." So kind of fascinating to see this business grow and transform under the leadership of Daniel Newman, who's probably known to many. Absolute legend of a guy. I don't think anybody works harder to grow this business. So it's been a fascinating place to sort of grow and sort of get into the analyst community and really sort of try and disrupt what was a pretty stodgy business before we sort of came along.
Interesting. You triggered quite a number of thoughts. We need to talk a bit more about that, but not in this podcast. Now, to finish off, I want you to put your future vision glasses on and think about the cloud landscape and give me an idea of how you think it's going to change in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, I think we're going to see the evolution of hybrid cloud. I think we're still going to see public cloud and the hyperscalers continue to launch services. AWS launched 250 plus services last week at AWS reInvent, and I don't see that slowing down. But as I said, the likes of TrueScale from Lenovo and HPE GreenLake and Dell Apex are continuing to get better and provide better options for clients. So I think what we're going to see is just increased optionality across the entire estate. I think Kubernetes and platform engineering is going to become more of a default option than it currently is. I think, having gone to the last 2 KubeCons and seen sort of 10 and 12,000 people at those events, I think Kubernetes is ready for prime time. So I think if I was to wind forward maybe 3 to 5 years, I think we're going to see better on-premises options, better public cloud options, and all of that sort of connective tissue around Kubernetes and platform engineering improving as well.
Excellent stuff. So that's been really great, Steven. How do people find out more about you and Futurum and how Futurum can help them?
So the futurumgroup.com to find out about the business. I'm at Steven Dickens 3 on all of the social platforms, so you can find me there. And then Steven Dickens on LinkedIn if you want to find me there as well. Happy to connect and and have a conversation if that's something that makes sense.
That's been really great, Stephen. Thanks for coming on the show. It's been awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you for having me, David. It's been a while since we've spoken, but good to talk to you today.
Good to talk to you. We'll talk again soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed Stephen's analyst take on the mainframe and the cloud landscape and the future. We'll be back live next Wednesday at 2:30 in the afternoon UK time. We want your feedback, your suggestions, or maybe you want to be a guest on the show. Put something into the comments here on LinkedIn or email us info@cloudindustryforum.org. We look forward to hearing from you and we hope to see you next week.